Hello, my name is Katelyn, and the title of the review I chose is The Real Monster in Gone Girl by Emma Teitel. So this review focuses predominantly on the structure of the story, including characters, character development, and its overall message, rather than the technique of the film, such as the set design, the cinematography, and even the directorial skills of David Fincher. I really enjoyed this review because of how it rejected the notions of these contemporary trends that are still popular 10 years later in 2024, such as the character likability, the ambiguity of these characters, and how it portrays gender in general. So let's dive in.
She begins by telling us that there are very few likable characters in Gone Girl, which she describes as a trend that's in vogue these days. So we have Amy, who is described as nagging, waifish, and a spoiled New Yorker. And then we have Nick, who is described as an aloof, misogynistic hipster who doesn't give a care in the world when his wife disappears. Ironically, though, Teitel tells us that the only likable character in Gone Girl is the hotshot defense attorney, Tanner Bolt, who is played by Tyler Perry. She then begins to talk about how moral ambiguity within protagonists these days is really celebrated in the filmmaking world. She gives us the example of The Wolf of Wall Street, who gives us our protagonist, Jordan Belfort. He's a dirty businessman and a terrible husband. And then she provides us with the TV series Breaking Bad, where we have Walter White. He's a meth dealer and a murderer, and Jesse, who is a drug addict and a complete sellout of a person. As a screenwriting major, I wanted to give my own take on this that kind of fit this criteria of the character being morally ambiguous, and that is the 2000 movie American Psycho starring Christian Bale. And so his character is Patrick Bateman. He's a psychopathic murderer and hides behind a white male complex. She says that moral ambiguity in the movies and on TV is now a mark of sophistication and depth. By these standards, then, Gone Girl is the deepest movie ever made. As I stated before, being a screenwriting major, we're taught that we need to have a protagonist that has some sort of redeeming qualities. However, both Nick and Amy have such morally ambiguous personalities that it's really hard for us to connect and want to root for them in the end. She then moves on to tell us that this story is just cheap. She says that marriage is a mystery unto itself, with or without a missing persons case. Unfortunately, this is when Flynn, who adapted the screenplay from her book, drops the cheap, anachronistic bomb on us. Amy, it turns out, isn't merely an unreliable narrator in the same obscuting fashion as Nick. She is an inadmissible narrator. Teitel says that, according to Nick, Amy is a demanding shrew, and Amy claims that Nick is absent and angry, even verging on abuse. So both Nick and Amy are trying to uphold lies of Nick trying to be a charming man and Amy trying to be a cool girl in order to sustain a marriage together. By pitting a feminist psychopath against a misogynistic jerk, this twist of Amy being an inadmissible narrator is just cheap and well calculated by the audience, making this story uninteresting and unsurprising. Now, I want to show a clip that moves us into the next point of Amy describing what she was pretending to be for Nick, which is a cool girl.
Nick loved a girl I was pretending to be. Cool girl. Men always use that, don't they, as their defining compliment. She's a cool girl. Cool girl is hot. Cool girl is gay. Cool girl is fun. Cool girl never gets angry at her man. She only smiles in a chagrin-loving manner.
Teitel describes Amy's character to be portrayed as comically insane, a sociopath, making false rape accusations, fabricated, an inadmissible narrator, and a caricature. Teitel mentions that Flynn really rejects the idea that women are innately good and wanted to create a character who can be evil and have a dark side. In her article, she says, "I've grown weary of the woman scorned. A heroine willing to set the world on fire to punish her inattentive, philandering husband is a cliche. Gone Girl may begin a smart and promising mystery, but it ends a misogynistic wet dream." So Gone Girl manages to transform a narrative about the negative tendencies of Amy, a heterosexual woman, and center it around an idiotic man, which Teitel argues that this is just an act of misogyny. In the end, I argue that Teitel is just trying to bring to our attention the cheap contemporary trends that are going on in the filmmaking industry back 10 years ago and now today in 2024. How are we supposed to root for characters who have no redeeming qualities and no strict morals? And is this story about the mysteries of marriage or just a confession of a mentally unstable woman? Or is it a sexist overview that details various methods through which a woman could wrongly accuse a man? Emma Teitel really argues that the story Gone Girl is centered around misogyny, and she brings to light that we need to question these contemporary trends of how having unlikable characters, a cheap story, and portraying gender in this way is what deems a film good. As a film major and someone who enjoys movies, I wanted to give some closing thoughts that centered around the technique of how Gone Girl was made. I included some photos that I really appreciated on the cinematography work, and I can't disagree with Titel's claim on misogyny. However, I do really love to see characters that don't fit the mold, and I think Gone Girl did accomplish that. I really enjoyed and connected to Emma Titel's review, so thank you so much for listening.